Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Paola, and today I have a very special returning guest, Anna-Marie McLemore. How are you? How's it been? Are you excited? You have two books coming out this year. One already came out, so.
I'm so glad to be talking with you again. Thank you for inviting me back.
Yeah.
Oh, and I love your nails.
Thank you.
I just did mine this morning because they were terrible before that.
Cute. And I love the eyeshadow as well.
Oh, thank
Lovely.
you.
So, could you please tell us about LAKELORE?
So LAKELORE is about two Mexican-American non-binary boys, both of whom are neurodivergent. One of them has dyslexia and one of them has ADHD, and about the enchanted world under a nearby lake that starts coming above the surface, threatening to bring everyone's secrets along with it. It's about how our brains work. It's about art, especially alebrijes. It's about non-binary identity and about queer community and neurodivergent community, and just generally finding the people who love you and celebrate who you are.
I love that. And I'm constantly amazed at how talented you are with like the world building. And I love that part about living in one of your towns. So what was the world building process like?
So the world under the lake came to me really quickly. It came to me actually when I jumped into a lake. It was like I just kind of saw it all at once. It was just kind of there. So that part happened faster than the town that's on land. So part of it was thinking about, okay, I know I have some of the feeling of what's in the world under the lake. What does it mean above lands? Like, how is it connected? And how is it sort of this landscape for these two characters' brains, for Bastien and Laura, like their neurodivergence, how their brains work, how it sort of comes to life underwater, and how is this world connected to the history of this town? Like, what are the stories told about it? I'm always interested in, like, what are the stories we tell and how do they change? How do they evolve? And what I wanted in the world under the lake, but then it was the process of, what do these things mean? How are they connected to these characters? How are they connected to this town and its history?
Oh, I love that. I find it fascinating because everybody in your books has like a specific thing from their town, and it just feels like so very real. So both of your characters, Bastien and Laure, are finding ways to cope and talk about their mental health, which is usually kept a secret. Like, it's not something that we talk about. So what was liberating about writing their stories?
I did a lot of research about ADHD and dyslexia. I have both ADHD and dyslexia, but I always do a lot of research, even for identities that I have. So I wanted to create environments where, like, there were people that were accepting of them. There were people who understood them. With Bastien, you have ADHD that, like, a lot of their friends know about, their family knows about them and supports them. But they still have trouble expressing, like, okay, this is what's happening inside of my brain. How do I communicate this? And with Laure has, like, close family that's very, very supportive of, like, how do I adapt in, like, learning processes? Like, how do I learn to read? Partly because Laure has a dyslexic mom. So I wanted to show that, like, you can have a lot of community support. We need community support. We need people who love us as we are and who are going to support us when we do the process of, like, of working with and managing our brains, managing our mental health. But also at the same time, we have to do that ourselves. And it's an evolving process, because, like, the people around you, you need them to, like, affirm you and love you, but that doesn't automatically mean that you're going to love how your own brain works or be able to know what to do with it. So it's a both process, and it doesn't always go at the same pace. And I wanted to give a realistic idea of the fact that, like, how we feel about our own brains, our own mental health, how we feel about ourselves, it varies. Like, there are times where Laura thinks, like, okay, this is just how my brain works. I read in a particular way. And there are other times where Laura's just really frustrated with their brain. And same with Bastien and their ADHD, and figuring out, like, okay, part of this is knowing that there is no single moment where I think I'm okay with myself and my brain. It's an ongoing thing that you have to choose. As much as we may want it to be this, just like, okay, I'm I'm deciding to be okay with it, and love who I am. It's a choice that we have to keep making.
Oh, I love that. And I agree with everything that you're saying about how you need that community, and you need those people who support you and understand you. But sometimes it can be very frustrating for yourself. But I love that we can find those people. If you had to pick a song that fits each Bastien and Laure separately, what would it be? And if you have a song for their relationship?
Oh, I like with these questions, I either have the idea instantly or I like never have it. I might need help on this one. Do you have any ideas?
I think for their relationship, I don't know. I like ballads, and I think a ballad would fit them. I always, when I read young adult, and please take this as a compliment, I always wish I could see the Disney Channel original movie version of them. So I'm trying to think if any Disney Channel songs would fit. Maybe Space Between. Ooh, that's a very queer song. Space Between from Descendants. And then for each of them, I'm just thinking Disney because that's all I listen to. Maybe, I don't know. Bet on It is a very angsty song. So maybe that would also fit them. Oh, another song I like, the theme song for Love Victor would apply. It's
Oh,
very.
thank you. I really appreciate your help with this question because I have a terrible habit of just throwing all of my songs for my writing onto one endless playlist instead
Yeah.
of like playlists for each book. A lot of people I know are a lot better about that, about like doing their individual playlists. So it's a goal of mine to do that at some point. But right now it's like just the 16-hour playlist that has everything together.
It's hard. It's hard to pick songs. The next one is a little bit of a mix between Lakelore and Self-Made Boys, which we will talk about in a minute. So, what are the themes that you find yourself always writing about?
Well, I write a lot about identity, so the ones that come up over and over again, like queer identity, trans identity, like Latina identity, especially Mexican American identity. In terms of like other themes that come up, I think I write a lot about different kinds of found family and how found family is often like sometimes it's like a mix of like the family that you grew up with and also like family that you find. Sometimes it's more family that you find. So I
Mhm.
think because that's really like in my queer heart, that's something I come back to a lot, and something that I think has been there and that is there more and more as I've like come out as trans, come out as bigender, is just looking at like femininity and masculinity, like especially in my communities, especially like what do we think girls should be, what do we think boys should be, and what do we need to question about that. Those are like the sort of overarching stuff that keeps coming up, but that tends to look very different
Yeah.
depending on the story. It's like in Lakelore there's a lot of space for non-binary identity, but in Self-Made Boys this is a time and a place that doesn't have much of a conception of non-binary identity. So we're talking about girls, we're talking about boys, we're talking about women, we're talking about men. And you find yourself and you find your community sort of in these spaces where you don't necessarily have like the language that we have now for these identities, but they're there. So whatever setting these things go into is going to affect how they come out in the story, but they're often there in some way.
Well, I love that. And yes, found family is one of my favorite things to read about. And your found families are always like so homey and cozy. Next, we gotta talk about Self-Made Boys. That is a Great Gatsby retelling. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about it, and also tell us a little bit why The Great Gatsby.
So, Why the Great Gatsby is Emily Settle, the editor of the Remix Classic series. Like the Great Gatsby was the one that she picked for me, and it was like, can you do Great Gatsby? Like, and they don't make any author like do a particular one. So if you don't want to do it, like you can talk about, like you can say like, what if I do this one? But Great Gatsby, I was like, no, I definitely want to do that, for a couple of reasons. One, I just had this feeling of Gatsby being trans, like
Mm-hmm.
he's a transgender boy. It made so much sense to me. And I've talked to other readers about this, and I am not the only one who saw this. Like when I started talking about this, I found so many other readers who thought, yes, like the coding is there, which made me so happy. And also, like, when I read this book in high school, I thought, okay, is anyone else seeing what I'm seeing? Like, Nick is really, really into Gatsby. Like, the little comments about, like, oh, he's so beautiful, but in a straight way, of course. I'm like, no, you're not fooling anyone. So I thought, yes, this is my chance for Nick to like openly be into Gatsby. I also wanted to do something more with Daisy, who is one of those characters where I was like, you both like annoy me and fascinate me
Yeah.
so much. When I went about these characters, I thought, okay, I want Gatsby to be a trans guy, and I want to actually like face the fact that this is a year where you have a lot of veterans like trying to figure out life like after the war. You had a lot of underage soldiers, and I wrote Gatsby as one of them. Like, he's still a teen in this book, but because of the timeline of World War One, he's an underage veteran. And these parties, like Gatsby's parties that you see in the original and that I wanted to keep in Self-Made Boys, a lot of times they're trying to have all this like color and light and sound to try to forget what they've been through. I wanted to actually write that on the page. I wanted to write Nick, who's now Nicolas Caraveo, as like still a Midwestern boy, but Latino Midwestern boy, also transgender boy. And I wanted to write him as like this math genius who gets this chance to go work on Wall Street and is like, yes, this is how I'm going to help my family. This is how I'm going to do this. This is how I'm going to make my way as a man in the world. And Nick has a supportive family for his trans identity, which I know like may seem unrealistic in some ways, but like in all times, like there were families who were supportive. And in my version of Daisy, Daisy is a Latina socialite who's passing as white and who's like made efforts to pass as white and says like, okay, I'm making my way in society. I'm making a name for myself. Like, Nick, take this opportunity, come to New York. Like, I'll tell our parents that I'll look out for you. Like, it'll be fine. And then Nick gets there and realizes that Daisy is passing as white and is like, oh yeah, here's my friend, not my cousin, and just what that's like for Nick. So I wanted to keep a lot of the same story beats that are in the original, but look at what was under it and have the why be different. And also, like, I don't mind saying, like, giving all of these characters a better ending. I don't think it's
Yes.
I don't think it's a huge spoiler considering like I'm the one writing it. Like, Gatsby's not going to die at the end. like trans Gatsby is not going to die at the end of the book. So it's like a better ending, and that's all I'll say. But I know that's a question that readers have had, and I was really excited to write a better ending for these characters.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the thing for your books. Like, you do a really great job at making people scared, but it's like, relax, relax. I got you. I got you.
Yeah, it's gonna work out. I'm not gonna tell you how, but it will
Yeah.
work out. Like,
Yeah.
just because I feel strongly about giving characters like good endings, especially characters like from these communities.
What's been the best part about writing Nick and Jay as trans boys who fall in love?
So I think one of the best parts has been them being able to openly on the page like talk about trans identity and talk about things like binding and how you move through the world like in the 1920s, and right, like, yes, we were here like the entire time, because this is always hard for me to admit, but I know I'm not alone here. Like, I always knew, like, since I was little, because of the community I grew up in, I was like, yes, like, people of color have always been here throughout history. That's obvious. But then I thought like lesbians started in the 1960s. So like
Mhm.
it wasn't obvious to me that like queer and trans people, we have been here throughout history. So writing that in the 1920s, I was like, yes, like we have been here. Like we have been here throughout history. And also just like hearing the response from readers who were excited for this book and hearing like, yes, this is like, we want this. A lot of us felt this too. And being able to like give readers the Gatsby that they've been looking for is really wonderful.
I love that. I think that, I mean, retellings are kind of like fix it fic. I mean, it's the best part about reading it as well. Daisy, as you said, she's very annoying but also very interesting, and that's why she's my favorite character in both the original and in your retelling.
Oh, thank you.
So, what was challenging about writing her as a Latina who is passing as Caucasian/white?
So it definitely involved like looking at some of how I had lived my life for a while, like the effort I made to pass, to like the way that I styled myself, the way that I like worked really hard to try to make sure that I never had an accent like creep through even a little. So I had to face part of my past that I don't think about all that often. And in doing that, I thought like, okay, this is what we have to do in reading and also in retelling. Like if there's a character that we're like, oh, I can't stand you, like what do we have to face about this character that we're facing in ourselves? And in this case, it was Daisy bending to what she thought she had to be, so that Daisy wasn't just this removed character who we all were ready to judge. I mean, it's pretty hard not to judge her in the original,
Yeah.
but I wanted to make it harder to judge her in this one because you see like the little cracks in this facade that she has going.
I love that. I really like that your books really do like challenge the reader's preconceived notions about, like in this case, why people chose to pass. So this is like my all-time favorite question and my all-time favorite part about the book, which is the exploration of what it means to have the American dream and to chase after the American dream. So what was challenging about digging deep on that?
When I thought about the American dream, and part of why this book ended up being called Self-Made Boys, is both thinking about like the myth of the self-made man, which I'll get into that in a second, and also the idea of self-made boys as in trans boys, which is something I'll get to in a couple of seconds. The whole idea of self-made men, it just has a really terrible and problematic history, and it really only starts to have true meaning when Frederick Douglass like gives his lecture about it and talks about like, let's actually talk about the fact that there are no such thing as self-made men, because this myth that like you completely make yourself, and like it's usually not the case when people are saying it, and two, it's kind of impossible because you're made by those around you. You're made by where you are, by the communities that you're part of, the people that you're around. So I wanted to take some of that apart in Self-Made Boys alongside the idea of like, in some way, like if you can make yourself as a self-made boy, like if you're a trans boy, because you
Yes.
have to, you are making your masculine identity, you're making your identity as a boy. And that was something that was very close to me, especially during that time as I was like defining who I was as a guy, because I live about half my life as a guy. And I was writing Self-Made Boys at a time when I was thinking about like, what kind of boy am I? And
Mhm.
trying to figure out like, how do I actually decide this versus like just absorbing the toxic masculinity, absorbing the machismo. So when that goes alongside the idea of the American dream, there's this myth of like you can do anything you want to be, you can be anything you want to be, like as long as you work hard enough. And that's like a really terrible myth to put out there, because it's this idea of like if you're not getting where you want to go, it means you're not working hard enough, and that's just not true. It's just not how it works. And also this undercurrent of if you work hard enough, you can be exactly as we want you to be, which
Yes.
means we will accept you.
Yeah.
So these like different strands of what these characters are following that has been there for decades. Like we're 100 years later and we have some of the same myths going. So part of this was sort of living in these two places at once and thinking about like, what were those myths, and thinking about that same sort of parallel in imagining these characters' lives. So having that empathy for my characters, but also that humility to realize
Mhm.
that a lot is the same and a lot isn't.
I love the like double meaning of the title. I think my first reaction to it was like, yeah, because they're trans. I love that.
Oh, good.
And then when I started, reading, I was like, oh,
I'm
You're
so happy that this is like the transest title I've ever had. So
yeah.
it's also probably the gayest cover that I've ever had.
Oh my God. I mean,
I love that cover.
I love it so much. So lastly, who do you write for?
I think I write for readers who need to know that we can have happy endings, who need to know that we can have like happy beginnings along with those happy endings. And I write for readers who need to know that like wherever you are literally and also in like your journey with yourself, like there are people waiting to affirm you and love you. Like we are waiting to celebrate who you are.
I love that. And on that very wholesome, very lovely note, thank you so much for joining me once again. It's always a treat to talk to you.
Oh,
We
thank you
didn't
so
get to
much.
talk about food though. That's I'm
I know.
annoyed at myself.
How
How
did
did
that
that
happen?
happen?
How did that happen? Like it's funny. I ended up having a lot of food in Self-Made
Yeah.
Boys, but to begin with, it was just mentions of the food that Nick ate like when he was with his family.
Yeah.
And then we got to New York. And when I'm not writing about like Latin families, I had to do research and think about like, okay, what were these people eating in like fancy New York? I just write about food. Like it's something that I do. So I
Yeah.
thought like, okay, we're gonna need a lot more food in this book.
I'm like, oh, I didn't ask them about food. What happened here? So once again, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a treat to have you on the channel. I love your answers. I love your books. So thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget to check out the description below for buy links for both LAKELORE and SELF-Made Boys. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Anna-Marie. We will see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me.